makes it more difficult for entrepreneurs to exercise judgment about future market conditions. Thank you. The government response to the financial crisis, the bailouts, the subsidies, and so on, have exactly the opposite effect of making the economy better, right? Entrepreneurship, as emphasized by Mises in his 1951 essay, Profit and Loss, is not just about earning profits, but avoiding losses. It is essential that those economic actors who act as entrepreneurs or promoters, but don't do it well, but are not very good at anticipating future market conditions, at forming expectations about what goods and services consumers will want to buy. People who do that and do not earn revenues in excess of their costs, who earn economic losses, should not be entrepreneurs any longer. And a successful, a vibrant economic system, a vibrant and a successful market economy is one in which people are free to earn profits and free to earn losses. Policies that protect the entrepreneurs from loss, that subsidize or bail out those who have made unwise judgments about the future, are harmful to the process of resource allocation. Now, a lot of government agencies use the word entrepreneur and they say, oh, we're going to make entrepreneurship better with special training programs for young entrepreneurs, and we're going to subsidize government funding for research and development, and government-funded incubators to try to train people how to start businesses and so on. Well, aside from the usual issues that Austrian economists would raise about the ability of government planners to engage in these kinds of activities in a reasonable, in an efficient way, right? Also keep in mind that from the Austrian point of view, there is no optimal ratio of small business to large business, new firms to old firms, high growth firms to low growth firms. This is something that can only be worked out through free and open competition on the market. So when government planners say we need more startups, we need more small firms, so we're going to subsidize them with tax money. Well, I mean, that may lead to too many small firms where the market may prefer a greater number of large firms, right? The government can no more centrally plan the size and age distribution of firms, the location of an innovative cluster like Silicon Valley, which industries are the most entrepreneurial and should get the tax money and so on. Government can no more do that than it can plan any aspect of economic activity. Namely, it can't. So the best government policy to promote entrepreneurship is the simple one, right? Sound money, secure property rights, and economic liberty. So if the government will allow the market process to operate, that is the best thing the government can do to promote entrepreneurship, to allow entrepreneurship to flourish, and to lead, to do what is possible to promote economic prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter Klein. I invite you to come to this side of the podium. E nós vamos fazer como da outra vez, uma rápida conversa, na verdade, novamente, apenas 2 perguntas, porque a gente vai ser bem rígido com o tempo na volta do almoço, nós vamos voltar às 2 horas pontualmente. Então, se alguém quiser começar colocando a pergunta, eu acho que não tem necessidade de ser por escrito, a gente pode passar o microfone. Algum comentário, alguma pergunta? Bom, nesse caso... Ah, por favor.
What's your vision about if isn't it pointless to produce and to create innovative wealth in the fact that it's driven away?
Okay, so the question is, if I understand correctly, in an interventionist economy in which the government extracts many resources, the government makes it difficult for entrepreneurs to earn profit, doesn't that reduce the incentive to engage in entrepreneurial activity?
Yeah, and if it is not counterproductive, like the better I produce, better for the government and this structure.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I completely agree in the kind of historical, what Mises calls thymological sense, that in an economy with heavy amounts of government interference, where there are all these distortions, bailout subsidies and so on, I mean, why bother to be successful if A, I won't get to keep the fruits of my own labor to begin with, and B, I may be helping the government by giving it more tax revenue with which it can do horrible things and so on, then absolutely we would expect many individuals who could otherwise be successful promoters to sit things out. You could even call that Atlas shrugging. How about that? Atlas might be more likely to shrug in those conditions. However, Mises points out that from a purely theoretical point of view, entrepreneurship is not something that we can measure quantitatively, right? Mises says, Guido will remember the exact page, I'm sure. Mises talks about, even in Soviet Russia, even in Nazi Germany, there are always those individuals who are striving to improve their situation, to make things for themselves and their families less bad than they otherwise would be. So one can never eliminate entrepreneurship altogether. Even in a totalitarian state, it is part of human nature for us to strive to make ourselves better off. But of course, the overall economic consequences would be much reduced or attenuated compared with the beneficial effects we would expect in a free society. Thank you.
I think we have one participant finishing another question, so let's wait. Okay.
And I have the headset if someone wishes to ask a question in Portuguese. The translator will translate it for me.
This one is in Portuguese. Hélio Beltrão, I will try to... Quer que eu tente?
Should I put...
Ok. Tá com a tradução simultânea, claro.
Just one
Ok.
moment. Make sure it works. I have it turned on. Okay.
Ok, qual a definição de monopólio o professor acha mais interessante economicamente dentro dessa visão sua exposta? Claro, a neoclássica ou monopólio legal, governamental, garantir reserva de mercado, garantindo a reserva de mercado.
Okay, yeah, so, I much prefer the latter definition. As you may know, there are some differences in the Austrian school about monopoly. Mises' definition of monopoly is a little bit different from Rothbard's. Kerzner's definition is closer to Mises and not quite the same as Rothbard's. Rothbard preferred the older sort of scholastic notion of monopoly as a government license or an exclusive government grant of a privilege, a government-created entry barrier, compared to the neoclassical notion of a monopoly as a firm that has a high market share. Or if a market has 15 firms, it's competitive, but if a market only has 3 firms, it's a monopoly or an oligopoly. I would agree with most Austrians in rejecting that mainstream notion that one can measure how monopolized or how competitive a market is by counting firms or by estimating market shares. There are a number of problems with that view. It's overly static, the measurement is artificial, the definition of a market is arbitrary, and so on. But I would hold more to the Rothbardian view that from the point of view of competition among entrepreneurs, all that is required is the absence of legal barriers to enter a particular business or a particular market.
So, just one little bit. What do you mean by sound money? Is it to close Federal Reserve or some kind of percentage increase of money?
Well, I imagine I only have about 30 seconds left to answer. So I won't, the question is, what do I mean by sound money? Well, I mean, look, I'm being deliberately agnostic for the point of view of this particular lecture, because we have much more time during the conference to debate the gold standard versus fractional reserve banking, 100% reserves, fractional reserves, and so on. From the point of view of what I'm discussing here, all that's necessary is, a monetary system in which the state or the credit system does not distort the value of the monetary unit, right? So, theoretically possible, sure. I mean, Mises talks about the importance of, Mises' theory of economic calculation is basically a monetary theory, right? Economic calculation is comparing these future revenues against present costs in a common unit with numbers, right? So the conference attendee who decides whether or not to come to the conference and hopes to get benefits tomorrow and so on, that's not catalactic, because the profit and loss cannot be measured in a number. You cannot measure your subjective utility from listening to me versus the subjective cost of not getting to do something else. The catalactic entrepreneur can measure benefits and costs in money. So you need a monetary economy with a monetary unit that is sufficiently stable to permit economic calculation. Now, whether that requires a gold standard, whether that's consistent with fractional reserve banking or fiat money, I leave that question to future speakers.
Thank you, Peter Klein.